Mira stepped off the transport shuttle and felt a chill as the doors of the hangar opened. The space was enormous, tall metal walls reaching high above her, with lights that flickered softly over rows of starships from many different worlds. She had seen ships in holovids before, but none this close, none this real. Each vessel seemed alive, humming quietly as if holding a secret within. She adjusted the strap of her tool bag and took a deep breath. This was her first assignment on the remote station far from Earth. Her heart thumped with excitement and a little fear. She had studied and trained for this, but nothing could truly prepare someone for the size and silence of a hangar like this. A voice crackled over her earpiece. "Mira, welcome. I am Chief Engineer Talo. You will report to Bay 7 for your first inspection. The station operates differently from planetary docks, so stay alert." Mira nodded even though he could not see her. She turned toward Bay 7, careful not to trip over the loose panels on the floor. The smell of oil and ozone filled the air, sharp and metallic. Sparks flew from some distant repairs, and the faint sound of engines running added a low hum to the background. As she walked, she noticed a figure in the shadows. The alien was tall and slender, moving slowly between ships, almost like a ghost. His skin had a faint silver sheen under the hangar lights, and his eyes glowed softly, reflecting the blue and green lights from the ships. He worked quietly, hands precise, adjusting something in the hull of a fighter. Mira paused. She had never seen anyone like him before. She continued walking, but found her eyes drifting back to the figure. There was something about the way he moved, careful, almost gentle, yet focused. He didn't seem to notice her. She wondered if he was a pilot or another engineer, but something about him felt different. There was a quiet air of mystery around him. Bay 7 was toward the center of the hangar. A small team of engineers were already gathered, checking instruments and tools. Mira approached cautiously. "Hello," she said. "I'm Mira, new assignment from Earth." A middle-aged engineer looked up. "Welcome. I'm Jalen. Chief Talo sent you for support on the repair checks. Follow me and we'll show you the station's systems." Mira followed Jalen along narrow catwalks above the main hangar floor. She tried not to be distracted by the ships below, each one different. Some were small, sleek fighters. Others were massive cargo vessels that could carry entire colonies. She had studied starships before, but seeing them in person, surrounded by the strange alien technology of the station, was overwhelming. "Do you work with pilots often?" Mira asked, glancing at the shadows where the silver-skinned figure had been. Jalen smiled. "Every day. Some are easy to read, others harder. You'll learn. Keep your focus and don't get lost in the lights." Mira nodded, though she felt a pull toward the quiet figure still moving among the ships. She wondered what he was thinking, what stories he held behind his calm expression. Hours passed as she walked the hangar, inspecting engines, checking tools, and learning the routines. She discovered that working here required more than skill. It required observation and patience. Every ship had its quirks, every system its demands. And all the while, the silver-skinned figure was there in the background, sometimes watching, sometimes disappearing into the shadows. At the end of her shift, Mira sat on a low crate, tired but excited. The hangar, so vast and intimidating at first, now felt alive. The hum of engines, the sparks of repairs, the whispers of alien voices. It all mixed together into something almost musical. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and jotted down notes about the repairs she had seen, tips she had learned, and sketches of the unusual systems she wanted to study further. As she wrote, she felt movement at the edge of her vision. The alien figure stepped out of the shadows and paused a few meters away. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, two beings from very different worlds. Mira's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her voice calm. "Hello," she said softly. The alien's eyes glowed a little brighter, and he nodded. "Hello," he replied, his voice quiet but steady. "I am Darren." Mira smiled, feeling a strange sense of recognition despite never having met him before. There was something about his presence, calm, careful, yet full of unspoken stories, that drew her in. The hangar lights flickered above them, casting long shadows. Mira and Darren stood there for a moment, two strangers in a vast place filled with steel and stars, unaware that this first meeting would mark the beginning of a connection neither of them expected, but one that would change them both forever. Mira looked around once more at the ships, the shadows and the quiet alien beside her. She felt a mix of excitement and curiosity. The hangar was full of work, mystery, and possibilities. And now, with Darren there, she realized this assignment was going to be far more interesting than she had ever imagined. The next morning, Mira arrived early at the hangar, her bag heavier with tools and spare parts. The air smelled of metal and oil, familiar now but still carrying a sharp electric tang that made her nose tingle. She was eager to begin but also nervous. She wanted to prove herself and secretly to see Darren again. As she walked past the rows of ships, she spotted him immediately. Darren was crouched beside a sleek silver fighter, adjusting something deep inside its engine. He did not notice her at first, absorbed in the intricate work. The way his fingers moved, delicate yet precise, made her pause. Mira cleared her throat softly. "Good morning," she said. Darren looked up slowly, his glowing eyes meeting hers. There was a quiet calm in him, almost as if he had been expecting her. "Morning," he replied, his voice steady but low. He did not move away, only gestured slightly toward the engine. "I'm checking the fuel conduits. They are sensitive. It requires care." Mira stepped closer, curiosity stronger than her shyness. "I've studied these engines, but I've never seen one like this in person. Maybe I can help." Darren tilted his head slightly, considering. Then he nodded. "If you wish. Be careful with the conduits. They respond to touch, not force." For the next hour, they worked together in silence, each focused on the engine, but aware of the other. Mira handled tools carefully, mimicking his careful movements. She was impressed by the way he combined precision with patience, never rushing, never making a mistake. "You handle the tools well," Darren said finally, breaking the silence. "Not many humans can manage the subtle systems of this ship." Mira smiled, a little embarrassed but pleased. "I like to learn. I want to understand how everything works, not just fix it." Darren paused, studying her. "Curiosity is valuable. It leads to discovery, and discovery leads to understanding." His words were calm, almost philosophical, but Mira felt their weight. He spoke as if he had seen much and learned even more. She noticed a small scratch on his hand as he adjusted a delicate panel. "Did you hurt yourself?" she asked, concerned. Darren shook his head. "Minor, nothing serious." But Mira could see the small line of red and instinctively grabbed a cloth from her bag. She cleaned it gently, her fingers brushing his hand. He flinched slightly, not from pain but from surprise. "You are careful," he said quietly. "Almost to himself, I try," Mira replied, feeling her cheeks warm. For a moment they worked side by side, and the hangar seemed quieter than usual. Sparks from a nearby welder lit up small patches of the floor, and the hum of engines became a soft rhythm around them. Mira realized she had been holding her breath. After a while, Darren finally spoke again, softer this time. "Tell me about your world." Mira blinked in surprise. "My world, Earth? There is a lot to say. Forests, oceans, cities, people, complicated, sometimes kind, sometimes careless." She laughed lightly. "I think the trees would like your ships better than humans would." Darren tilted his head, intrigued. "Trees? You have living giants?" "Yes," she said, smiling. "Tall and old. They grow slowly, but they remember everything." Darren considered this, then nodded slowly. "Memory. Important. Even for ships, perhaps." They shared a quiet laugh, the first real moment of connection between them. Mira felt the tension in the hangar ease. For the first time, she realized Darren was not just mysterious, he was thoughtful, intelligent, and surprisingly gentle. As the morning passed, Mira showed him a small trick she used to test the fuel flow in engines. He watched closely, then tried it himself, adapting it slightly. She marveled at how quickly he learned and improved her method. When their work was done, Darren straightened and looked at her. "You are skilled." "Human skill. More than I expected." Mira smiled, feeling proud. "And you're amazing with these engines. I never thought I'd see someone handle them so carefully." He nodded, his glowing eyes softening. "Perhaps we can work together again. Tomorrow?" Mira's heart lifted. "I'd like that." As she packed her tools, she stole one last glance at him. Darren had returned to his ship, crouched in the shadows again, but now it felt less lonely. Something unspoken had passed between them, curiosity, respect, and the faint beginnings of trust. For Mira, the hangar was no longer just a place of work. It was a place of possibility, where humans and aliens could meet, share skills, and perhaps in time, share more than just work. And as she left the hangar for the day, she found herself thinking of Darren, wondering what stories hid behind those calm, glowing eyes and knowing that tomorrow they would continue to discover them together. The next day, Mira arrived at the hangar earlier than usual, eager to continue learning from Darren. The hangar was quiet, only the soft hum of distant engines filling the vast space. She walked past the rows of ships, her eyes scanning for him, and finally spotted him in his usual corner, crouched beside a dark-colored fighter. "Good morning," she said softly, stepping closer. Darren looked up, his glowing eyes meeting hers. "Morning, Mira." His voice was calm, steady, like the hum of a well-tuned engine. He did not invite her closer, but neither did he move away. Mira hesitated a moment before speaking. "I noticed you work alone most of the time. Is it easier that way?" Darren's hands paused in their work, and he leaned back slightly. His gaze drifted to the ceiling as if considering how much to reveal. "Sometimes," he said finally. "Working alone prevents distractions, keeps focus, but it also keeps people away." Mira nodded, sensing there was more behind his words. She decided to speak gently. "I don't mind distractions if they come from someone who wants to learn or help." Darren's eyes flickered, a small sign of acknowledgement. He returned to the engine, but Mira felt that the door to his world had opened just a little. They worked side by side, occasionally exchanging quiet words about engines and tools. But Mira's mind wandered, wondering about Darren's life before the hangar, before she had met him. She had seen the way he watched the stars from the docking bay, the way his expression sometimes carried a quiet sadness. She wanted to understand, but she did not want to push too far. Finally, during a brief break, Mira asked, "Darren, if you don't mind me asking, why do you keep to yourself?" Darren was silent for a long moment. Then quietly he spoke. "I lost people. Important people. Long ago, I promised not to let anyone else close. Safer that way." Mira felt a pang of sympathy. She could see the weight of his past in his posture, in the careful way he moved. "I understand," she said softly. "Sometimes people hurt us without meaning to, or by accident, but hiding alone doesn't always keep the heart safe, only lonely." Darren glanced at her, the faintest hint of surprise in his glowing eyes. He said nothing, but his fingers paused over the controls. Mira realized that he had shared more than he ever had with anyone in the hangar. She felt honored, but also knew he might retreat again at any moment. "I won't push," she added gently. "I just want you to know that it's okay to trust sometimes. Small steps." He nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly, before returning to the engine. Mira watched him work, noticing how careful and precise he was, how he never wasted a movement. She realized that Darren's past had made him cautious, but it had also made him exceptional in his craft. Hours passed, and Mira found herself learning more than just engines. She was learning patience, observation, and the quiet ways someone could express themselves without words. Darren had a rhythm, a way of moving that told stories if one only watched carefully. During lunch, Mira found a small corner of the hangar where she could eat while keeping an eye on the ships and Darren. He sat nearby, quiet, inspecting a panel. She wanted to speak again, to continue building trust, but she decided to let him come forward in his own time. As she ate, Mira noticed other crew members whispering quietly. Some were curious about the human who spent so much time with the alien pilot. Others seemed to respect her dedication. But Mira paid them little attention. Her focus was on Darren, his skill, his calm presence, and the subtle sadness she could feel beneath his quiet exterior. After lunch, she approached him once more. "Darren, would you like to see a method I use to check engine stability? It's simple but effective." He paused, then nodded. "Show me." For the next hour, they worked together again, sharing techniques and adjusting each other's methods. Mira noticed that Darren smiled very faintly when her suggestions improved the efficiency of his work. It was a small smile, but it brightened the shadows around him just a little. When the shift ended, Mira packed her tools. Darren stood nearby, watching the activity of the hangar. Mira felt a quiet connection growing between them, fragile but real. "You did well today," he said, his voice low and steady. "Your skill and your patience are unusual." "Thank you," Mira replied. "I think we make a good team. I hope we can keep working together." Darren's eyes softened. "Yes, we can." As Mira left the hangar, she looked back at him. The shadows that seemed to surround Darren no longer felt so heavy. She sensed that the first layers of his past were being shared, and that slowly, carefully, She was becoming someone he could trust. For the first time, Mira felt that the hangar was not only a place of work or engines. It was a place where human and alien could meet, learn from each other, and perhaps in time, bring light into each other's lives. And somewhere deep in the quiet hangar, Darren watched the stars, thinking about the human who had stepped into his world, and realizing that perhaps not all shadows were meant to remain forever. The next morning, the hangar was alive with urgency. A large cargo ship had arrived from a distant colony, and its main engine system was damaged. Supplies were delayed, and the station needed the repair completed quickly. Mira's heart raced as she heard the news. This was bigger than anything she had worked on before, but it was also an opportunity to show what she could do. "Chief Tallow wants you and Darren on this repair," Jalen said as Mira approached Bay 7. "He believes you two can work well together. You'll need focus and speed." Mira nodded, her hands gripping her tool bag tightly. She scanned the hangar and saw Darren already inspecting the cargo ship. His posture was calm, but Mira could sense the tension in the air. He did not look at her, yet she knew he was aware of her presence. "Ready?" she asked, approaching carefully. Darren glanced at her, his glowing eyes steady. "Ready." Together they climbed the scaffolding surrounding the ship's engine. The massive machinery hummed with residual energy, and the smell of heated metal filled the air. Mira felt small beside it, but Darren's presence steadied her nerves. He moved with practiced precision, and she mirrored his actions, careful not to disturb the delicate components. "You have good timing," Darren said quietly, "and careful hands. Useful for complicated repairs." Mira smiled faintly. "Thank you. You make it easier to follow." Hours passed as they worked together. Darren guided her through steps she had never tried before, recalibrating energy conduits, adjusting cooling arrays, and aligning power grids. Mira followed carefully, sometimes suggesting minor adjustments of her own. Darren listened, sometimes nodding, sometimes adapting her ideas. Their teamwork felt natural, as if they had done this together before, though it was only their second major assignment. At one point, a spark flew from a high-voltage panel. Mira froze, but Darren calmly reached over and diverted the energy with a small tool. "Stay calm," he said softly. "Panic causes mistakes." Mira took a deep breath and nodded. She felt the rhythm of the work, the quiet communication that passed between them without words. Every glance, every careful movement built trust. During a short break, Mira leaned against the railing, wiping sweat from her forehead. "You make this look easy," she said. Darren shook his head slightly. "Practice, attention, and focus, but you learn quickly. Humans, adaptable." Mira felt a warmth rise in her chest. She had always hoped that humans could be seen as capable among alien engineers, but hearing it from Darren felt different. Special. They returned to work, moving in perfect coordination. Mira watched as Darren's fingers danced over the engine panels, delicate but decisive. She realized that he worked not only with skill, but with care, as if each machine had value beyond its function. It was a perspective she had never fully appreciated before. "You understand the flow better than I expected," Darren said as he adjusted one of the conduits. "Good observation. Patience. Helps." Mira smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "I think I'm learning from the best teacher," she replied softly. As the hours passed, their work drew the attention of other crew members. Some whispered about the human and the alien working together so seamlessly. Mira ignored them, focusing on the engine and the subtle cues from Darren. She felt a quiet bond forming, strengthened by shared effort and mutual respect. Finally, after a long day, the repair was complete. The engine hummed steadily, its systems aligned and stabilized. Mira stepped back, exhausted but exhilarated. Darren wiped his hands and looked at her. "You worked well today," he said. His voice carried a quiet approval that made Mira's chest lift. "So did you," she replied, smiling. "I never thought I'd enjoy working on a ship this big." Darren tilted his head slightly. "Efficiency, skill, teamwork. You contributed much. I appreciate it." Mira felt her heart warm at his words. She realized that beyond the engines and the sparks, beyond the work itself, this was something new. Connection, trust, a shared purpose that brought them closer than she had expected. As the hangar lights dimmed for the evening, Mira packed her tools. She looked around at the massive cargo ship, now repaired and humming with steady energy. And then she looked at Darren standing quietly nearby. "Thank you," she said simply. Darren nodded, his eyes glowing softly. "Tomorrow, we continue. There is more to learn. Together." Mira smiled, feeling a thrill of anticipation. The hangar was no longer just a place of work. It was a space of discovery, skill, and perhaps something more. And with Darren by her side, she knew that every challenge could become a shared adventure. The following evening, the hangar felt quieter than usual. Most of the crew had returned to their quarters, leaving only the hum of the ships and the distant glow of engine panels. Mira finished inspecting a small shuttle and was about to pack her tools when she noticed Darren watching her from the shadows. "You finished for the day?" he asked softly. "Yes," Mira replied, trying to sound casual. "Everything is ready for tonight?" Darren paused, then nodded. "Good. Come, I want to show you something." Mira followed him through the hangar, curious. The silver-skinned alien moved silently, leading her past rows of starships and under scaffolding. At the far end, a small shuttle waited. It was compact but sleek, unlike any human design she had seen. Darren opened the hatch. "You must come. Few humans see this view," he said quietly. Mira stepped inside, excitement bubbling in her chest. The shuttle hummed as it powered on, and Darren guided it carefully out of the hangar and into the open space of the station's orbit. Stars stretched endlessly around them, scattered like diamonds on black velvet. Mira's breath caught at the sight. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes wide. Darren said nothing at first, just piloted the shuttle with precision. After a few minutes, he pointed ahead. A cluster of glowing nebula clouds stretched across the darkness, swirling in colors of violet, blue, and gold. Mira's eyes widened again. The colors reflected softly on Darren's skin, giving him a gentle, otherworldly glow. I haven't shared this with anyone," Darren said quietly. "Not in many years." Mira turned to look at him. "Why not?" she asked softly, sensing there was a story behind his words. He shook his head slightly. "Memories. Some are painful, but stars are different. They are calm. They watch. They remember. They forgive." Mira nodded, understanding more than he realized. "Sometimes it helps to share the quiet," she said. "Even with someone new." For a while they sat together in silence, watching the nebula swirl. The shuttle drifted gently, its systems humming softly beneath them. Mira felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time, and she noticed that Darren seemed more relaxed too. "You like it?" he asked finally, glancing at her. "I love it," Mira replied. "It's magical, like nothing I've ever seen before." Darren nodded, his glowing eyes reflecting the colors of the nebula. "I wanted to show you, because you are patient, careful, trustworthy." Mira felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet joy she could hardly describe. She realized that Darren was not just showing her the stars. He was showing her a piece of himself, something precious that he rarely shared. "Thank you for trusting me," she said softly. He inclined his head slightly. "Trust, difficult, but you make it easier. Something new, perhaps beginning." Mira smiled, sensing the subtle meaning behind his words. There was a connection forming, quiet but strong, built on respect, patience, and shared moments like this one. As they floated among the stars, Mira found herself thinking about the hangar, the engines, and the work they had done together. She realized that those moments had prepared her for this quiet adventure, that trust and teamwork were just as important as skill. Darren turned the shuttle gently, angling it to follow the nebula as it shifted in the distance. "Do you feel small here?" he asked. Mira shook her head. "No, I feel free, alive, and not alone." Darren's eyes softened. "Good, that is important." They stayed there for a while longer, letting the quiet of space and the beauty of the nebula fill the empty corners of their thoughts. Mira realized that Darren had carried a lot of weight for many years, and that this moment, simple, quiet, shared, was a beginning for both of them. Finally, the shuttle drifted back toward the station, its engines purring softly. Mira glanced at Darren. "Thank you for showing me this. I'll never forget it." Darren inclined his head, his eyes glowing faintly. "Neither. Will I, you, bring light to shadows." As they docked and the shuttle settled in the hangar, Mira felt a quiet excitement. She knew their connection was growing, slowly and carefully, like the engines they repaired together. She also knew that the hangar, once just a place of work, was now a place of discovery, not only of ships and systems but of trust, friendship, and something deeper. Mira stepped out of the shuttle, her heart still lifted by the sight of the stars. Darren followed, silent but steady, and for the first time she felt that the quiet alien beside her was not so distant. He was a companion, a teacher, and perhaps something more. And in the stillness of the hangar, among the shadows and the humming ships, Mira realized that she had found a place where she could belong, and someone who had begun to belong beside her. The hangar buzzed with quiet activity the next morning, but Mira felt a tension in the air she hadn't noticed before. As she walked toward Bay 7, whispers floated around from small groups of crew members. Some were curious, others seemed amused. Mira realized they were talking about her and Darren, about how often they worked together and how close they had become. She felt her cheeks flush but tried to ignore the gossip. She had grown used to working in the hangar's shadows, and Darren had become a quiet anchor for her, but now she sensed a shift. When she spotted him crouched near a small shuttle, he didn't look up. His posture was stiff, his movements more deliberate than usual. "Good morning," Mira said softly, stepping closer. Darren paused briefly, then nodded. "Morning." His voice was calm, but she noticed the faint tension underneath. They began working on routine inspections, but Mira noticed that he kept a careful distance, speaking less than usual. Small tasks that had flowed naturally before now felt more formal and measured. Mira tried to keep the conversation light. "Did you sleep well?" she asked. Darren's glowing eyes flickered. "Sleep. Adequate." Mira hesitated, then said gently, "Darren, is something bothering you?" He shook his head quickly, returning to the panel in front of him. "No, nothing." But Mira could sense the walls closing in around him. She remembered his words from the first days. The shadows he carried, the losses he had endured. Now it seemed those shadows were growing again, triggered by whispers and curiosity from the crew. During a short break, Mira watched him from across the hangar. He stood alone, his eyes distant, tracing the outlines of ships in the dim light. Mira felt a pang of concern. She wanted to reach out, but she also knew that Darren needed space. His past had taught him caution, and pushing too hard could drive him further into the shadows. Finally, she approached carefully. "Darren, I know the others talk, but I want you to know something." "You don't have to hide from me." Darren's head tilted slightly, but he did not respond. Mira continued softly. "I'm not here to replace anyone from your past. I'm here to learn, to work with you, and to be someone you can trust." For a long moment, Darren said nothing. Then he finally spoke, his voice quieter than usual. "I fear losing again, to care, is dangerous. Humans feel too much." Mira's heart tightened. She had sensed his fears before, but hearing them aloud made them real. "Darren, I can't promise the past won't touch us, but I can promise that I will walk beside you. We face things together, not alone." Darren looked at her, his glowing eyes searching hers. For the first time that day, she saw a flicker of relief in them, though his caution remained.
"You mean?"
"You will stay?" he asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes," Mira said firmly. "I will stay. But you have to let us work together, trust together." He was silent, then nodded slowly. It was a small step, but it mattered. The distance he had created was shrinking, replaced by the faintest glow of hope. The rest of the day passed with careful collaboration. Mira followed Darren's instructions while offering small suggestions when she could. Each successful step seemed to lighten the invisible weight he carried. When the shift ended, the hangar lights dimmed and Mira packed her tools. "You did well today," Darren said quietly, his voice steadier than it had been in the morning. "Patience, trust, skill, you bring balance," Mira smiled. "And you've taught me so much, Darren, about engines and about patience, about seeing more than just work, seeing the person beside you." Darren's eyes glowed faintly, and for the first time that day he allowed himself a small smile. "Perhaps shadows, not always heavy light. Possible." Mira felt her heart lift. She realized that Darren's fear was not a wall to break, but a door to open slowly, carefully together. And in that moment she understood that trust, patience, and quiet courage could create bonds stronger than any obstacle. As she left the hangar, Mira looked back at Darren standing among the ships and shadows. She knew that tomorrow they would continue working side by side, facing challenges and fears together. And she also knew that the hangar, once a place of solitude for Darren, was becoming a place of connection, trust, and growing hope. Mira walked back to her quarters, thinking about the delicate balance of fear and trust, loss and hope, and about the quiet alien who had begun to share his world, and perhaps his heart with her. The hangar was unusually tense that morning. A transport ship carrying essential supplies had suffered damage during docking, and its systems were failing. If repairs were not completed quickly, many operations on the station would be affected. Mira tightened her tool bag and headed toward the ship, knowing that Darren would already be there. As she approached, she saw him crouched near the engine access panel, his silver skin catching the flicker of overhead lights. He glanced at her, and for the first time she noticed a subtle urgency in his calm demeanor. "Good morning," she said, stepping closer. "Morning," Darren replied, his voice steady but tense. "We must work quickly. Ship unstable." Mira nodded, feeling her heart race. The task ahead was difficult, but she also sensed this was a moment where their trust and teamwork would be tested. Together they climbed the scaffolding and began assessing the damage. Sparks flew from a damaged conduit, and the hum of failing engines filled the hangar with a low, anxious vibration. "Careful with the cooling array," Darren said, adjusting a panel. One wrong move and the system could fail entirely. Mira worked alongside him, carefully following his instructions while offering suggestions when she noticed a minor misalignment. Darren listened, adapting her ideas with subtle adjustments. Their movements were precise, synchronized, almost like a well-rehearsed dance. Hours passed, and the pressure in the hangar mounted. Mira's hands ached from tightening conduits and adjusting delicate panels, but she felt a quiet determination. She could sense that Darren relied on her not just for skill, but for calm and focus, and she relied on him for knowledge and guidance. At one point, a warning light flashed, and the engine began to overheat. Mira froze for a second, but Darren's hand reached out, steadying her tool. "Focus, breathe, we manage together." Together they rerouted power, stabilized the cooling system, and adjusted energy flows. Mira marveled at Darren's calm under pressure. His eyes glowed faintly, but he never panicked, never rushed. He guided her with quiet precision, and she followed with equal care. "Almost done," Darren said, his voice a calm anchor in the tension-filled hangar. "One final check, then stable." Mira adjusted the last conduit and checked the system. The engine hummed steadily, energy flows balanced and aligned. Relief washed over both of them, though neither spoke at first. They simply stood, catching their breath, feeling the weight of the challenge lift. "You did well," Darren said quietly, his glowing eyes softening. "Your focus, patience, skill, valuable." Mira smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. "We did it together. You're amazing with these engines, Darren. I learned more than I thought possible today." For a moment, they simply stood side by side, the hum of the repaired engine filling the air. Mira realized how much had changed since the first day she stepped into the hangar. Darren, who had once kept to the shadows, now stood beside her as an equal, trusting her skill, trusting her presence. Darren's eyes flickered, reflecting the soft lights of the hangar. "Perhaps shadows not permanent, light possible." Mira nodded. "Yes, together." The tension that had filled the hangar for hours seemed to melt away. Crew members began to whisper quietly, noticing the human and the alien who had faced the challenge side by side. But Mira barely noticed them. She felt a stronger bond with Darren than ever before, a trust forged through pressure, teamwork, and shared determination. As the day ended, Darren led her back to the hangar exit. "You, valuable," he said simply. "Not just skill, courage, trust." Mira smiled, her heart warming. "And you've taught me so much, Darren. Not just about engines, about patience, carefulness, and trust." He inclined his head slightly, a faint glow in his eyes. "Perhaps trust can grow, even from shadows." Mira realized that the hangar, once a place of solitude for Darren, had become a place of shared purpose and connection. Their work had not only saved the transport ship, but had also strengthened the bond between them, lifting the shadows that had once separated them. As she left the hangar, Mira glanced back at Darren. He stood quietly among the ships, calm but no longer distant. She knew that their journey was far from over, but the walls between them had begun to fall, replaced by understanding, respect, and hope. And in the quiet of the vast hangar, surrounded by metal and stars, Mira felt a certainty that they could face anything together, from engines to fears, from darkness to light. For the first time, the hangar felt less like a place of isolation and more like a space of possibility, where trust, friendship, and something more could grow. And Mira knew that she and Darren were ready to step forward together. The hangar was quiet in the early morning light. The massive ship shimmered softly under the overhead lights, and the hum of engines provided a steady background rhythm. Mira walked among the rows of vessels, her tool bag slung over her shoulder. But her mind was not on work today. She was thinking of Darren, who had become a constant presence in her life, both at the hangar and in her thoughts. She spotted him near one of the smaller shuttles, crouched over a panel as usual. But today there was no tension in his posture. He glanced up as she approached, his glowing eyes softening at the sight of her. "Good morning," Mira said, smiling. "Morning," Darren replied. His voice was calm, steady, and something in it made her heart lift. "You early?" "I wanted to see you before work," Mira admitted. "And I wanted to tell you something." Darren tilted his head slightly. "What?" Mira took a deep breath. "You've changed my days, Darren, the hangar. The stars. Working with you, it's all different now. Better. I trust you, and I hope you trust me too." Darren paused, studying her carefully. The faint glow in his eyes seemed brighter. "Trust has grown," he said slowly. "Not easy, but it is impossible." "With you," Mira's smile widened. "I'm glad. I want us to continue together, not just for work, but beyond that." Darren stood slowly, stepping closer. "Beyond work?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of curiosity. "Yes," Mira said softly. "I want to share more. The quiet, the stars, maybe even life together. If you are willing." For a long moment, Darren said nothing. Mira held her breath, unsure what he would do. Then he nodded slowly, a quiet determination in his gaze. I'm willing," he said. Relief and happiness washed over Mira. She realized that the walls he had built around himself were no longer barriers. They were doors, opening carefully, slowly, and now fully letting her in. They spent the morning working together, but it was different now. Each movement, each adjustment of panels and conduits carried a sense of connection that had not been there before. Mira felt a calm certainty, a bond that was strengthened not only by shared work but by trust, patience, and understanding. After completing a routine inspection, Darren gestured toward the hangar exit. "Come," he said quietly. "I want to show you something." Mira followed him, curiosity rising. He led her to a small shuttle, the same one he had taken her to see the nebula. Today, however, the shuttle was prepared for a longer journey, and Darren's calm confidence made her feel safe. As they ascended into space, Mira felt the familiar thrill of floating above the station, surrounded by stars. Darren piloted the shuttle with precision, but now there was a warmth in his presence that she hadn't noticed before. He glanced at her occasionally, a quiet smile on his face. They reached the nebula cluster again, and Mira's eyes widened at the colors shimmering across the darkness. "It's even more beautiful today," she whispered. Darren's voice was gentle. "Because we share it now." Mira realized that this moment symbolized their journey, the trust, the shared challenges, and the slow lifting of shadows. The stars reflected their bond, quiet, steady, and full of possibility. For a while, they simply drifted among the nebula, speaking softly about their dreams and hopes. Mira told Darren about her desire to build a ship of her own one day, and he shared stories of his people, their traditions, and the lessons he had learned from the stars. The connection between them deepened, built on understanding, respect, and the quiet comfort of being together. As the shuttle drifted back toward the station, Mira felt a sense of completion. The hangar, once just a place of work, had become a place of beginnings, friendship, trust, and now something deeper. When they docked, Mira stepped out, glancing at Darren. "Thank you. For everything. For trusting me, for sharing this with me." Darren inclined his head, his eyes glowing softly. "You brought light to shadows. Now, future, possible." Mira smiled, feeling the full warmth of his words. "Yes, Darren, together we can face anything. And build something new here in the hangar. And beyond." He nodded, a quiet determination in his posture. "Together." As they walked among the ships side by side, Mira felt the hangar transform in her mind. The shadows were no longer empty or lonely. They were spaces of trust, connection, and hope. Every ship, every panel, and every star above seemed to echo the bond they had forged. And for the first time, Mira knew that she and Darren were no longer just human and alien, mechanic and pilot. They were partners, companions who had discovered the power of patience, trust, and quiet love. The hangar was vast, full of metal and light, but Mira no longer felt small within it. She had found a place where she belonged and someone who would always stand beside her. Together, they looked up at the stars beyond the station, ready to face the future, no longer in shadows, but walking forward into a bright shared beginning.